Right. Hello, everyone, and welcome to the second day of the Manila PTG. Today is the first day of the topics discussion, and we have one agenda for today that will end with our operator hour. So the recording is going to be broken by these two pieces. So we'll first have the recording for the topics, and then the operator hour will have like the recording separated. So if you're watching this video, then and you want to check it out, check out the operator hour, please look for the other video in the OpenStack Manila YouTube channel. So yeah, I think we went through a quick round of introductions yesterday, but yeah, I think we can get started today with our first topic for the week, which is deferred deletion. And we have that topic assigned to Kiran and Felipe. So Kiran and Felipe, floor is yours.
Okay, hi.
Hello.
So can you click on this bug and go to the pull request? No, not this one. Yeah, this one. Yeah, so basically this is the pull request that is being created to fix the issue that we observed during deletion of child share, the share that is being created from the snapshot. And what we found is because the backend operation on the NetApp side seems to be busy in a clone split. And that is the reason the consecutive operation like unmounting the volume or share fails. So to fix this, what we had thought is that anyway we are going to delete the share, so there is no need to kind of continue work of the ongoing clone split operation. So I checked for the APIs that there exist for clone split start, stop, and status, and I use these APIs to get the status. And if the status is says that the operation is ongoing, I decided to kind of stop that clone split and continue the further operation, which in my testing observed that the status sometimes returns percentage values, which is not 0 or 100. So basically in between, which indicates that the clone split is ongoing, and then the triggered call of clone split stop works fine and allow us to process further to unmounting of the volume. So it doesn't fix all the things that are needed under deletion of child share, but it fixed the first step where we face a error of unmounting the share volumes. So this is my observation, and I would like to know what Philip thinks. Morris is also here, so he can also add his points for this.
Can you open the file with the solution of the lib base base?
Yeah, so this is the code where I check the status, and if it's not 100%, that is, so 100% is being returned when either the clone split is not triggered or it's being finished. In both cases, it returns 100%. All other cases, basically the cases where it is ongoing, it returns some non-100 values in between 0 to 100. And because of that, then it triggers the clone split stop operation. Yeah, so this is basically the rename of the function, because split volume clone is kind of, I mean, it's just a rename. We can avoid it or we can keep it. The rename is being done with the intention that there will be new API stock and status.
Or what is the 100? The 100 code that you're.
Yeah, no. Can you move on, Carlos? So basically, let's go to the implementation of these functions. Yeah. So this is the clone split status API, which requires it basically returns the status in terms of percentage. And if it fails to return the percentage, that means either it is completed or it is not triggered at all. So in both cases, it returns the 100. So like we are internally returning the 100. Otherwise, we are returning the actual percentage.
I see. Yeah, but if the clone, so if like it's running, you trigger a clone stop, right?
Yeah,
So you stop the clone split, and can you delete the volume when the clone is on stop? Because you haven't finished the clone split, right? And you just stop.
There is a little bit echo with your voice. Hey, Philip, you were saying something?
I think he's on mute now, but not sure if he's doing something with audio.
Can you hear me now?
Yes, I can.
I'm just asking about the clone stop. Can you go back, Carlos, to the base? It's clear what the API layer is doing. So it's clear. Just the API on the base, I think you are triggering a stop when the split is going.
Right.
Okay, so when you have a split, you trigger a stop, right? So you're stopping the split process when you have a split. So can you delete the volume that has a clone in a stop state? So because you haven't split the relationship, right? You have just stopped the split process. So can you delete this?
So this delete, so this stop split is the step of the delete. What I see here is that if we successfully stop the clone split operation, the next call, that is remove export, which internally does unmount, works fine.
I see. It means that we don't need a kind of the deferred deletion, because we set this discussion to thinking about the deferred deletion, and that was the gotten idea for solving this problem. and you implement a solution that doesn't need the deferred. I mean, we don't need to change the core layer in order to solve the problem, right? So just stopping instead of calling to split the relationship, you just start the split relationship, and then during the delete, you check if it's on split. If it's on the split, you stop the process, and it works. So we don't need the deferred deletion for this.
So, sorry, but actually I'm not able to get what you are saying. Carlos or any other, like, can you guys repeat for me? Like,
Yeah, so I think the idea that Felipe, if I understand it correctly as well, the idea that Felipe is trying to mention is Gotham suggested a different approach, which was trying to do some sort of a deferred deletion. But as we are understanding now with this approach that you are doing with, doing the that operation with the split clone and sending the volume deletion right after wouldn't require a deferred deletion. So I think if I understand it correctly, Philippe was trying to reaffirm that, right?
yeah, right. It don't need the deferred deletion. I mean, was your suggestion for the deferred deletion, was it a generic or was it a NetApp specific? Because I think this section of the code that we are discussing through the pull request is the NetApp specific, and it internally just triggers the existing API to stop the clone split. And in my testing, I observed that it stops immediately, which allows us to kind of process further and do the next operation or the next sub operation under the share deletion, which is like unmounting the share, and it works fine. Like previously, the code was failing in the unmount of share, and what I observed is that the unmount kind of works fine after this pull request.
Hey, sure. So
can you help us? What do you think about this?
I think I understood what you're saying, Felipe, but feel free to interrupt. Well, thanks for explaining the situation, right? You've attempted quite a few fixes around this problem. If I recall, I mean, there could be another open review from Felipe that was attempting a retry around the same mechanism. And the problem here is that you have a long running operation that you're unable to reconcile. And the issue here is that you are probably going to wait until that long running operation is going to complete or be cancelled in some way. And what I saw was happening in these reviews was that a waiter was being added, such that the driver thread that's gonna delete the share is eventually just gonna keep waiting until a particular status is reached and then follow up with the cleanup, right? And that is not happening in your patch. And so I'm okay with you with your current proposal saying, yeah, we don't need deferred deletion, at least not for this use case, right? So I agree with that. As far as if you're confident that this has been well vetted and and we don't need it, which is good news, right? Like we don't really need a feature. We need to add a feature in case the situation doesn't exist yet. I suspect it'll be at some point.
Hold on. So what you are saying is that the deferred deletion where we are not actually, so are you saying about the scenario where we are actually not deleting the share, but marking those share as a deleted, and then we revisit those share through the periodic callback function, and
Yeah.
in the periodic callback function, so yeah, that will be there. It will be needed.
So hold on. I'm not saying that we'll mark it as deleted. I think there is another thing that happens in the NetApp driver which does that.
Yeah, right.
But in this case specifically, I was suggesting that we use share states. We set a state on the share saying it is still being deleted in the driver. And then, yes, of course, there is a periodic thread, but this periodic thread is not running inside the driver itself, driver module itself. Not much of a difference between it running between the driver module and the and the share manager module, right? But the problem is we are trying to isolate these periodic operations, and at some point we might want to rethink the way they're happening. So I would much rather that code be confined to the share manager than inside the driver, because if it is inside the driver and it is obscure within a particular driver, it's not very generic. That the next problem that comes along for another shared driver, we would end up solving it again inside the driver layer. So I was suggesting we just do this in the share manager at that point. So the way that deferred deletion would work in my head was the deletion call would go in, and the driver would respond with saying, "I'm not done yet, but I have initiated a few things. Please check back." Right? And we check back after a particular periodic interval, and the driver repeats its checks or whatever it needs to do to make sure that the deletion is going to happen. And if it's done, it'll tell us it's done, and the share manager will go ahead and finish up the entire cleanup that's there. Whatever the database state changes, the quota adjustments, and all of that stuff. So basically, breaking that deletion step into multiple steps, and having that second step be a little more allow for a little more amount of time without making it a long running operation, right? So the earlier proposal for this was about making it a long running operation by adding a timer, by adding a wait. I mean, we're effectively doing that, but we're not really, we're going to push that waiter back into a single thread, right? Which is which we a threading and polling mechanism that we already have. So we're not going to spend any more threads waiting on the driver to do this kind of thing. Does that make sense?
Yeah. But so my question is like, so the one that you are suggesting, how this is related to the existing bug?
Yeah. So you're telling us with this code fix that for this bug, all you needed to do was a clone split stop.
See, if you go to the pull request, so Carlos, can you go to the pull request? So there is this line number 1611, which says that if that volume is being kind of exported, then we remove the export. So basically, we unmount the volume internally. This is one of the steps under the share deletion, and that step was failing. That step was failing because the volume was busy, the clone split was ongoing. So what I did is I stopped the clone split if it's ongoing, and because of this, the call at line number 1611, that is remove export, is kind of working fine, and we are progressing further. So deletion of share is like multiple steps. What I did basically is to make sure that the step which was failing at some point will be fixed so that we can process further. So as a part of next stage, which is like 1612, deallocate container and etc. So that will internally have its own logic of the share being marked as a deleting or a deleted, and then the periodic callback will actually clean up the shares and etc. So that part will be there. So the thing that you said that it will move to the generic is something we can do as a part of cleanup or reorg in future. But this pull request specifically focus only on the issue that was occurring at line 1611. That is the remove export was failing, and that is fixed.
I see. Okay. Yeah, that makes sense.
So it's like you are confirming that a stopped clone split does not allow to delete the clone, to delete the volume at the end. So it is just failing at a later stage. And we have more fixes in the pipeline, so to say, but we want to split it up into multiple pull requests, so to say, to make the review easier.
Yeah, awesome. Okay, that makes sense. So is your next step to go ahead and work on that deferred deletion then, or what is it like?
Yes.
I see.
And the problem with having it visible to the clients is they don't want to care about that. So they send a delete request and they want the share to be gone. They want to get the quota back.
Okay.
So that's why we solved it in a way that we hide everything from the clients. So from their perspective, really a short amount of time after they send the delete, the share is gone. And what happens in the backend if the clone split is still ongoing, they don't care. And they shouldn't care, I think. Because it's driver specific.
And what if this deferred deletion fails? Is that like, I mean, how would we surface something up to, let's say, somebody else that wants to, has to go do some cleanup operations?
Yeah, that's the one operating the cloud who has to take care of doing the cleanup, to checking that this is really working.
Yeah. But I mean, do you have like an early thought of how that deferred deletion would look? Is it more or less like what I was speaking, or is that, I mean, I understand the quota adjustment part, right? So what I'm hearing is, let's say we implement deferred deletion, it would be in such a way that if the driver is able to confirm that it accepts the deletion, and it will do it at a later time, we go ahead adjust the quotas, make the share, no longer visible to the end user. It's done at that point, and we go ahead and still pursue the deletion, but in like this periodic callback fashion until it's taken care of.
Yeah, the idea would be to do it the same like we already have for snapshots.
Mm-hmm.
So renaming them and then have a periodic job that checks for this naming pattern and sees if they can, if it can clean up after the clone split is done.
Yeah. I mean, I know that this works fine for this.
The clone split start.
Sorry, I didn't catch that.
So if the error is the share cannot be deleted because it's a clone, then of course this deferred deletion needs to start the split job again. That was stopped earlier.
Yeah.
Yeah, but deferred deletion would have an issue with the quota thing as well too, right? Because I mean, if the idea is, oh, I want to delete the shares and I want to get my quotas back, that wouldn't happen immediately. Like it would take some time for the periodic tasks to go ahead and check on the shares that are being deleted and actually say, oh, they are deleted and we should release the quotas. Because otherwise, like if the share isn't deleted, then we might end up in a situation that the space wasn't actually dropped in the storage, but we already released the quota in Manila. So I mean that would create like a difference between the quota values we have and what's actually being consumed at the end. But I think it's that depends also like on the how long it would take to delete the clone split or to actually complete all of the deletion. So if that doesn't take a long time and the periodic task doesn't take like a lot of time to get back to the shares again, then that shouldn't be a major issue. But it depends on, as I said, on the how fast the periodic task would run.
I don't think so. Like, I feel like, I mean, we can design this with the thing saying it can take forever, right? It can take a long time, and it's not a problem. As far as the service is concerned, that we will still go ahead and behave like the same, whether it takes 10 seconds later or even a few minutes late or hours late, right? And the reason I say that is if the problem is to track the share, we would just do that with statuses and not with this internal mechanism that NetApp has, the NetApp driver has to rename the shares. And the way we would, the way that would really work is let Manila do the tracking within its database. It has all the information with respect to the shares. It makes the driver implementation simpler. And the next time somebody else seems to have this same problem, it's an easier approach because they can just use this mechanism rather than inventing another thing inside the driver. And it's a problem that we are imposing on the drivers, the quota system, right? So we do have a way to track that ourselves, which is why we do, right? But if we wanted to do this a little differently, it's possible that we could use a different project and go ahead and release the tenant's quotas, but transfer that over into the other project and adjust the quotas once the deletion is completed. Just as a way to track what is being done. Or if we basically say, okay, this is unaccounted for quota, it's not a big deal too, because we expect these sort of things to be temporary. We would continue to log the status of the deletion if things don't work. And a cloud deployer has a way to at least track what went wrong and help out the deletion some other way. Like, there was something else to fix on the back end that we are unable to do in the service.
Yep.
But I agree, like, an end user doesn't need to worry about this. And so we should probably, at the time where the deletion is accepted, go ahead and clear, return the quota to the end user and then do our cleanup independent of that.
Manila assuming full control over backend? Or
Not full control, but as much as like it knows the share, right? It has all the information. So if the driver says, I'm going to need some more time to delete this, but the deletion is accepted, there are no preconditions that will stop the deletion. Right. And so I mean, apart from the one that I can take care of, which is this clone split, I just need to wait for it. It has nothing to do with the end user's interaction, right? I'm not aware, first of all, of any preconditions, but let's assume there are some that the end user is responsible to clean up. But there is none in this situation. So we go ahead, accept the deletion. We tell the share manager in the NetApp driver that I'm not done yet. Check back. Right. And so we in the share manager, we can continue to track this sort of a thing. But before we do that, as soon as the deletion is accepted, we do the quota adjustments. So it's pretty much the same thing as you have in the NetApp driver today, which is rename and have a loop and delete it later kind of a thing, except it's happening in the share manager and not in the NetApp driver code. And this allows us to have a generic approach for all shared drivers that might need this. And the reason I was also talking about the project change is because you were saying an end user does not need to care about this internal operation. So if you did remove the project from the share, the share disappears as far as the end user is concerned. And we could go ahead and, stash this somewhere else for an administrator to see. And
That's for the system scope, then. Probably.
You mean like the RBAC stuff?
Yeah. So if it's not tied to any project.
Yeah, it's not tied to any project. But is there a problem if we tied it to the admin project? Do you expect it to pollute the admin project or something like that?
No, but
Maybe it does. So
I don't know the admin project. I don't know if Manila is aware of it.
yeah.
It does
So
get
no, that might actually be the big problem there. Like, an admin project might also be a regular OpenStack project, except it's an administrator and might own some resources. Well, I mean, the Cinder has this concept that we could borrow in this case. They use something known as internal tenant. And if an internal tenant is not configured, I think they fall back to admin or something like that. And the idea there is that if you're trying to do, I think, image caching and stuff like that, they kind of store some volumes that they create with that tenant's context, and they use that just internally within the Cinder service. Just so that they can work around these issues of how can we make visibility and all that stuff possible. So if an administrator wants to inspect that tenant's namespace, they can do so because they're an administrator, and that's where they end up storing things that are related to multiple tenants as well. So we could apply that concept here as well. We would have a like a catch-all tenant, which would have these, deferred deleted shares until they disappear. I don't think Kiran was talking to us.
Yeah, sorry for that.
No problem.
Hi, Kiran, Saravanan here. So I have only one question here, and maybe from functionality point of view, maybe before I go there, right? Maybe Carlos, on line number 69, it is stopping, right? And stopping the clone split, not deleting, right? Line number 69. Yeah.
Oh yeah.
And stopping the clone split, and
Yes.
not okay. And
There is no API to delete.
yeah, stopping,
Yeah,
and even
sorry,
70 also. No, 70 also stopping after line number 70. After this clone split stopped. Okay, yeah. And okay, so a question to Kiran, right? So Kiran, I see that you are creating a clone, and but from ONTAP perspective, the clone is in progress, and the clone split is in progress, and but you're trying to delete that share immediately. I mean, you're trying to delete that volume immediately, right? And I just wanted to know, so whatever the split is going on, right? So whatever share it created, did it really serve the purpose? Because you created a clone and you're trying to use it, and maybe functional point of view, maybe that volume, that split, I mean that clone volume, right, may not be fully functional. And I just wanted to know why you are trying to delete immediately, because ONTAP is still thinking a clone is in progress, right? And if you yeah,
I mean, I think that is the customer use case.
Okay. No, I just wanted to see from this perspective. Maybe if you say that, okay, the volume is fully functioning and only this clone split, this operation is still showing in progress and it is nagging, and then we can have a bug in ONTAP. We can ask ONTAP because volume is fully functional and why it is still showing in progress. Okay, we can take it up, maybe that perspective also. Just wanted to know that on that front, Kiran. You understood my question, right? Yeah.
Yeah, but
yeah.
I don't think the issue with the on tap, because see, the kind of when the share is being created from the child, as soon as you create it as a part of creation, the on tap internally triggers this clone split. So if someone tries to delete immediately after the creation, immediately, I mean, very next instant, what he faces that the clone split is ongoing. So that is the reason we have to stop the clone split, so that the next operation as a part of deletion should succeed.
Okay. Is there any use case why somebody create and delete immediately? Just wanted to know that. Maybe if you don't want to share it here, it is okay. We can talk separately.
I'm not sure. Maurice, do you have any idea?
Yeah, we can share it. It's so first, it's several hours that this clone split is ongoing for big volumes. So it's not like you need to immediately delete it after minutes or seconds. So it really takes hours, because it's a low priority job on tap. So if the system is busy with other tasks, this clone split is really taking long. So I've seen it like for running for 6 hours, 8 hours or so.
Okay.
There is really some time to do stuff with the volume. And what our customers are doing in this case, it's some kind of validation. So they are creating a snapshot, creating the share form snapshot. So that would be the clone. And they are running some validation, some CI on this newly created one. And if this succeeds, they are throwing it away immediately. So it's they don't need it for a long time.
Okay, they use it only for some validations, and once that is through, then they don't need those clones. Okay, that's why they wanted to delete it. Okay, got it. Okay, fine. Yeah, thank you, Maurice. I feel that we mounting this clone, they are mounting this clone somewhere and using it for some other purpose. But yeah, they just do only some validation and checking something, and they're deleting it. Okay, yeah, fine, got it. Yeah, okay.
And it's a PI system that runs continuously, so that's also why they want the quota back immediately, so they don't work.
Okay, fine.
Awesome. Any other thoughts you'd like to share? So we agree with the approach on the driver fix, as it is, kind of helping at the moment to work around this issue. And I mean that we would be fixing a bug, but we understand that later we might need to work on, or the next thing to work on would be like some the pieces of the deferred deletion. So yeah, that's good. We can get some feedback in the review changes for the clone split. So please share the feedback there. And yeah, I think we have an agreement here. So any other thoughts you'd like to share?
Just one question, Carlos. I didn't understand. Should we keep trying to implement it for deletion? Should we move with this feature, or no? We can drop this. It's not clear.
I think if I understand it correctly too, the idea that we came out here was try to have it as two separate things. So this fix, yes, it will fix this issue, but also like the deferred deletion would be important too. So, but yeah, this bug fix already solves like partially the issue, and we'll stop having this this problem. But then deferred deletion would be a good thing to have too in the future. I'm not sure if others agree, but at least that's what I got from this discussion.
And do we need a spec or a light spec for deferred deletion?
For documenting purposes, I think so, yes. Yeah.
So I mean, looks like there is going to be more than the thing involved, right? Like the whole quotas and other things. So I would say let's start hashing it out. I'm sure you'll end up with the thing saying, okay, this needs a spec. There is no real difference between the light spec and the other spec thing that we have. The only thing is light specs were just, okay, there is just one little concept that I want to explain to you versus, this feature works in 10 different ways. These are the considerations. And so I'm writing a longer spec. So don't take it as formally as, oh, this is a light spec feature versus this other thing is a huge feature. So that's why it needs a spec sorts. So you can make the judgment call between either based on, I'm sure if you wanted to start out with just a paragraph that says, this is how I would like for this feature to work, and then people start asking questions and pointing out things, you'll end up creating that spec. So that's where I would start. If you're concerned about the format, then we can talk. I mean, I do think some of the formatting of the specs process is just fluff. But don't let that stop you.
One thing that came to my mind about the deferred deletion, NetApp has a flex group driver, although we don't have any customer running it yet, so that's the reason that we don't see many bugs being published. But suddenly they can start using it. So eventually they will start using it. And one of the problems that we may have is about the deletion, because flex group takes much longer when you're in your real production environment, and we couldn't test this in our development environment, but probably deferred deletion will be a nice solution to delete flex group sharps, because they are like huge shards. So this is another, use case for this. And we have the same problem with the create. We are using the waiters inside the driver. So flex using waiters, we create a kind of deferred creation. So we create the shard, and it takes like longer. So you use the same process as what I explained for deferred creation. And currently, for flex group, we are using waiters. We have waiters inside the drivers, but we can move just to the manager, and I think we have the same solution. But this, it works, at least on the development purpose, but we think that we can track doing this problem.
Yeah, that's a cool example for sure. I did not know about the flex group thing, right? And this is sort of thing where an end user does not know that if they're getting a flex wall versus a flex group sort of a thing. It's an abstracted concept. All right. I think, Carlos, if this is good, we can take the rest of the discussion.
Yep.
Elsewhere.
Yeah, sure. Thank you all for participating in this discussion. We are a bit late for the next discussion, but I think we can. It will be like a kind of a 1 hour thing. So are you okay catching a break now?
Can we break it up? We'll start. We'll get through some of the thing, and then can we take a break and between the stuff?
Yeah, absolutely. So let's do that then.
Okay. Thanks, because I mean, I did invite a few folks here, and they have other meetings. So let's try to get started, at least make good use of their time.
Yeah, sure. Okay. And sorry for having this running a bit late.
Oh, no problem. Thank you. I worked with Ashley on the content over here, and we've done this sort of a thing for the past few PTGs, and it's worked well. So I think, Ashley, would you want to take us through this?
Yeah, absolutely. All right, great. So let's get started. Some important changes to note regarding testing and stabilization. We're currently continuing to test the Ceph-fast NFS with package-based deployment and standalone Ganesha, and we will continue to do so until at some point in the future we remove support for the dbus mechanism from the driver. We'll have a little bit more about that during this talk. We've also successfully created a job to run multi-node DepStack with Ceph in the CI in Bobcat, and we're currently backporting this to Antelope. We're also testing in like a slew of other places, notably in the operators repository on GitHub, which is intended as a replacement for OOO. As for the upgrade code, this cycle we managed to implement an ensure shares protocol that affects all three driver modes. Currently, ensure shares is only run when a change is detected in any of like these configuration options listed at the bottom there. If you can scroll just a little bit, Carlos. There we go. Perfect. Thanks. Where was I? Right. So if a change is detected in any of these three of these configuration options respective to those drivers during a service restart, which can take some time, that's what ensure shares is run. With the change that we've implemented, we can also switch from the standalone NFS with Ganesha to the clustered NFS with Ganesha. So now Manila Share can replay all these access rules for each share to the driver, which will then reapply these access rules with the updated export path and identifying the new preferred path. The old exports are marked as preferred equals false. And once all the clients have switched over their shares to the new export location, the administrator can remove the old standalone NFS configuration options when restarting the service. It's important to note that the old export paths are there only for convenience, so any changes to the access rules will not be applied to the standalone server. So if you remove access to a client who's using the standalone NFS export path, they'll continue to have access, and the same thing applies if you're adding access. The good news is that this change was backported to Antelope. So I think that covers us for updates since our last PTG. So let's talk a little bit about what we're doing going forward. We have an ongoing effort for performance and scale testing of the clustered NFS Ganesha deployment. So far, we have found an issue where Ganesha consumes memory proportional to the number of CephFS subvolumes being exported. And that's because each subvolume export requires its own CephFS client stack. And now we're exploring using just one CephFS client stack across multiple subvolume exports to reduce this memory usage. I mentioned earlier deprecating the use of the dbus API with NFS Ganesha. The clustered NFS with Ganesha is kind of becoming the preferred way to use CephFS with Manila. And so we want to stop supporting the standalone NFS with the Ganesha server. We're going to be putting out a deprecation warning in this cycle, but let's talk a bit about the actual removal. Like, do we think that the cycle is a good time? Because it's a little weird with the whole tick-tock cadence or cycle cadence that we've implemented recently.
Yeah, and that's going to be tricky, right? Like, and when we're talking we mean it's 2025 March timeframe. So it's going to be quite some time before we have to this thing. So one of the things that might interrupt our plans here would be if the Ceph folks stop, in some way supporting some sort of a API that the standalone NFS Ganesha use case was using, and hope not, right? Like the reason is the way this is architected, it's pretty generic in the sense that we in the CephFS driver today with the standalone NFS Ganesha use a dbus API, and the dbus API is something Ganesha supports and not it does not really involve Ceph. but the export format and other things in the dbus API are things that are that we rely on today that have some sort of an API contract. But should Ceph folks decide to implement something more, this might break. And 2025 is quite a distance away.
Yeah.
And we're just shipping it in 2025. We expect to end up supporting it for as long as actually you said removal in 2025, so at least until 2025 we'd end up shipping that code, and then we'd end up supporting that code for as long as that stable branch is available for consumption, basically.
Yeah.
But I mean, the sooner the better. Most of the users should be on the standalone NFS Ganesha right now. So I think we can put out the feelers. We can start with the deprecation, email and so on to the operators, and find out if there are concerns with this, or if someone is expecting a longer switchover period. For one, I mean, the biggest concern is what we're documenting here as well. We don't have a good transition that is possible. We can help it as much as we can with this export, with this ensure shares mechanism that we're implementing, that we have implemented, and with these helpful hints and things like that in the export paths. So you would, as an end deployer, have to still take some more extra steps. And it's not good news there either, because it's possible that you're unable to disrupt your clients while performing this migration, and so it might be a pain. And right now, we're still investigating if it can be lesser of a pain, but we don't have any brilliant solutions there either. So I guess what we can do is communicate this via the email list that we have, and show our intent to deprecate. Because we have been testing the clustered NFS driver interactions, and so far we've not had any issues. And if we have, we've fixed them already. And as far as the NFS Ganesha community goes, and the Ceph folks, they are actually implementing this for consumers besides Manila as well. A certain large cloud is going to be using it, at probably a large scale, and so this is a pretty good integration for Manila users for sure, for the long term. And so it would make all the sense to migrate if you are using standalone NFS Ganesha today. Since Frank is here, and Francesco, and is there anything that you'd like to add to that?
Hey, Gautam. Not much. I just added a few links in the top of this header part where I mentioned, we mentioned that Trigolo is going to be replaced by the operator. And this is what we are currently using for testing purposes. So there is a demo container for Ceph that probably requires some changes to allow Ganesha to consume Ganesha from Manila point of view. So we may want to explore the strategy that is used to deploy Ganesha, and then see if we can extend the current testing to this scenario. I think there is the intention there is to move to Zool, which is something that we already use in the OpenDev community, so that we honed in the past. So the idea is to work on a framework that allows us to test this scenario as well. In that case, it would be just one single Ganesha instance, because the demo container is basically deployed as a pod, and it allows us to have a single process that is basically a single Ganesha, no ingress there, no HA proxy, no clustered version. But at least this is a start.
Yeah, and it'll just be able to test the APIs that we're using.
Right.
Yeah. Yeah, that makes sense. Certainly a huge, help to try to get that working without having to figure out a way to deploy Ceph on in this environment and other things. Agreed. Yeah, Frank just had to drop off. So I guess we won't hear the NFS Ganesha perspective, but he has been chatting with us quite a bit about this, and that's where we get the impression that the NFS Ganesha's use cases are actually growing with the Ceph cell, and clustered NFS Ganesha is being used elsewhere besides Manila and so on. So any thoughts then on the deprecation stuff that Ashley was asking about? If we went ahead and deprecated the standalone NFS Ganesha integration in Manila in the C cycle, we would end up removing it in the E cycle. So that's a year from now. But I mean, C is going to be a sort of like an LTS, a long-term this thing, right? Because we are in the tick of the TikTok model, and so we would probably, I mean, if there are bugs and stuff, we would continue to fix them. We'd continue to maintain this integration all the way till our removal in the E cycle. And potentially somebody that's upgrading would be going from C to E by skipping through D, and this should not be a problem with them because they're going to see a deprecation that's being done in C, and they have all the time until they go to E to actually act on this deprecation. And hopefully by then we would have published all the documentation for the upgrade as we expect it. We're working on that piece, and it should help them out.
Hey, Gordon, just a quick note here. I was wondering if this deprecation, to make this deprecation happening, we should invest more in the DevStack plugin Ceph and add more codes to make sure that we can test a Ceph ADM based cluster with an ingress daemon, so that you can easily deprecate the bus version, and we can rely, even if it's a single node. I'm not sure actually. The NFS single node is not a thing that can work according to the previous investigation that we had in CI. So probably the multi-node is right. It's a nice
good place
start.
to have like a yeah.
So the plan is, if I understand correctly, is having this multi-node job with Ganesha that is able to deploy an ingress daemon. So an active passive, a clustered Ceph ADM based Ganesha cluster.
Right.
And then we can go through the debus deprecation, right?
Yeah, that's the idea. Ashley, did you already mention that part? I think we had it elsewhere in the CI notes, right?
Yeah. I don't think I added it to this doc, but yes, the ingress daemon, that I have a rough patch, not up yet, but it will be up soon. It's still, I have it somewhere in my pie chart. But yeah, that part of the like multi-node CI, I guess, changes is where it would be tested. Yeah, I can ping you, Francesco, when I have that patch up, and we can see how it goes from there.
Thank you.
Yeah, but
That works for me.
it's a good concern. I agree, Francesco, that we would have to test entirely how we expect people to be deploying this stuff. So
Yeah.
definitely test with the ingress service right near the in Manila. So far we've not, and part of the reason is because we're running very few data path tests, and the ingress really matters for the data path. So that's why we kind of punted that. But it is something that Ashley's got to finish up, kind of thing, in the Ceph stuff that she was working on.
Yeah, no, I totally agree on the Manila point of view. The other side, on the Ceph side of the same feature, basically, is that we had in the past issues with the proxy protocol, with the client restrictions. So having this kind of tests with even with a single HA proxy instance and this active model, we can make sure that we can catch earlier regressions on this kind of problem, client restriction and things like that. So
yeah, absolutely.
I guess
Yep.
that's a good plan.
Yeah. Thank you. I actually did not mention that over here, but I think the last time we came to this PTG with this topic, we kind of had, we still had that ongoing, the HA proxy protocol part. And so that's an important part that was implemented in in NFS Ganesha and with Ceph. So you can deploy today an ingress service that'll actually expose the end client users to NFS Ganesha, and Ganesha will understand that part and apply client restrictions correctly. That was ongoing during the last PTG. So yes, definitely that will be the important test kind of a thing that we can do with this.
Yeah.
Thanks.
Yeah, on the Slurp upgrade, I'm good. I think following the guidelines they have for these sorts of upgrades now, I think that's, adding the deprecation warning now, and the ideal thing would be to, yes, have it deprecated in the E release. So yeah, I'm good with that, and I think it's, of course, the best option here. And that will give like deployers at least the chance to see the deprecation warning. Otherwise, we would not be pretty much compliant to the Slurp model.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. Okay, so I'm adding a few preconditions to that sort of a thing, right? So let's probably play out how the deprecation will work out. First things first, as Francesco mentioned, we are looking to test this with the ingress service, and figure out whether those parts are working with Manila, establish that is correct, and next document this upgrade procedure that we have implemented and how we expect that to go in the upstream docs, so that we can point to something like this in the mailing list as well. And then I guess we're ready to send out an email that would also be part of that procedure, and add a deprecation warning inside the code itself.
Yes, that's good.
Perfect. All right. I don't think there are any concerns then. Actually, did you get this thing? Did you have any other questions?
No, I think that covers everything, at least in regards to the most immediate stuff, which is the deprecation.
Yeah. All right. I think we are now at a logical end to one section at least. Carlos, is this okay for us to take a small break and then discuss the others?
Yeah, sure. That sounds great. Should we do 10 minutes, maybe? Yeah, that will leave us with 30 minutes to wrap up before the operator hour. Yeah, 10 minutes, I think it's good. So let's do a 10-minute break, and then we can get back to discuss the other remaining topics.
Sure.
Great, thanks.
Great, thanks. Okay, so after our 10 minutes break, then we are back with multi-FS support. Ashley, got the Chesco.
Hey, yeah, I'm here. I'm back. All right, so yeah, multi-FS support. So today it's possible to use Cephfs file system name configuration option to limit the driver to pick a Cephfs file system to create subvolumes or shares, or volumes, which are share groups. And if this option is not specified, the driver picks the first available file system, which could result in indeterminate behavior when multiple file systems are present on the Ceph cluster. There is interest on that mailing list inquiry linked there about identifying the file system in the export location. So changing the path prefix to the file system itself. Do you guys have any thoughts about that? Excuse me.
So, I mean, that was the question from the operator on the mailing list, as well as Elias, I suppose. Elias not here today, right, Carlos?
Yeah, not here today. Yes.
Okay. So we can just probably try to replay what he was chatting with us on the IRC channel. The concern was that in the past these path prefixes could be modified via configuration. and now they can't, because there is, I mean, no matter if you use different file systems, you're still going to see an export path that looks very much the same between different file systems. And that's because Ceph and MDS are doing the magic behind to resolve where what goes. And as an end user, the idea was that you don't need to care about this. But we are being told that for folks like Elias and at his organization, or this email thread that was started, they have a use case where they would like to see where things end up. Perhaps they're building on top of this in some way. And so the I actually have not heard back on the mailing list thread, besides us giving them how do you partition your data on CephFS with multiple file systems. But I guess we didn't have a solution back then. But brainstorming with Elias, he was suggesting that we could allow the driver to set the file system name in the export location as metadata. And that way it is configurable, it is consumable by humans as well as automation like Manila CSI to do some more work with respect to that, right? Like, for example, Manila CSI could use this as some sort of a hint for figuring out whether something is possible to be mounted or not, or having to apply some specific rules against an export as it is being mounted, and so on. Like there could be use cases that are built on top of this, but we would begin by plumbing that information as part of export location metadata that the driver sets. I know, I mean, Ashley is working on this feature right now, which will allow end users to also set export location metadata. But this would be one of those things where the driver sets this stuff. There is prior examples of this. There are two things that the drivers can set today. These are standard keys. Is admin only, indicating whether an export path is only usable by administrators, or the other one being preferred. That's the one we're using to indicate whether a export path should be used more often than the other ones that are not preferred, and so on. So this would be yet another thing that the CephFS driver would be able to set. We eventually initially expected that's what the export location metadata feature would be, as long as it does not break some level of abstraction. Like we would still have the drivers commit to code exactly what is being set, and not really funnel data directly from the storage system out into the export location metadata. So we can determine what this looks like and what options can be set. But that was the suggestion from Elias. Are there any concerns about this?
Nope, I think it can be a good idea. Yes, I would be in for this, and it's like metadata is kind of a clean solution for this stuff, right? It's consistent. We have been working with this. There's also like the another thing that I think drivers used, which was I forgot the name, but we have one specific place that some drivers use to save their specific information. But if we need this to be visible to someone else, then yes, metadata would be the way to go. Otherwise, like if you don't this like the user to see this, then yes, the other driver specific stuff would be the case.
So the driver specific stuff I think that you're referring to is driver private data.
Yeah. So yeah.
And that's basically a key value store that's available to all drivers, right? And not, I mean, and they use it for internal runtime information.
Yes.
And that's not exposed via any API to the administrators even. It is stored in the Manila database, so there's a way to get to it if you're an administrator, if you have database access, but it's not something that's funneled out through any Manila API. The idea over here would be on every export rather than the as a generic information within the driver. For one, I mean, if we were to expose this as driver private data, we would still do it per export in some way to consume it. That would be the concern here. Like, since there's no way automated to consume that, that would not be a good solution to at least Elias's problem.
Yep. Agree. Yes. I like the metadata approach. So good.
I still do have a question though for Elias as to, I mean, what use case does this solve? This is more me being curious as opposed to trying to, stop this solution or something like that. I just want to know, why would you want this kind of thing? How are you automating based on this information? Just to understand, because one of the things that that goes without saying is when DSS is false, you end up sharing backends with multiple tenants, and as administrators, there's a lot of circus that goes on into how do you securely partition your cloud and make sure nobody's I mean, make sure about your SLAs and your security SLAs and stuff like that. So I wonder if this falls in that category, and that's why he's seeking for this with this FFS driver. But we can ask him that question elsewhere, probably through a mailing list.
Yep. He mentioned he would be able to join likely the sessions on like Thursday or Friday. So that's another approach to, like, if we have like some minutes on those days that we can use to talk to him about this, then I think that would be a good opportunity as well.
Awesome, thanks. But Luis is here, and I know CERN is using multiple file systems too, right? So I don't know whether you have this use case at all.
Not from the top of my head, to be honest. I should check if, but yeah.
Awesome, thanks. Yep, Ashley, that's all I had on that thing.
Yeah, well, there's also the question of, should the drivers support multi-FS, like as it relates to pools, which is similar in the same vein of conversation. Francesco might have some ideas around this.
Yeah, first I have a question. I was reading the mailing list, and that looks like to me that you have a single CFFS file system, and you're trying to identify, to create multiple backends according to different sub-volumes, basically, which is a use case that is valid, and I think the metadata is a good solution in terms of the core project trying to handle this use case with a single share with multiple backends. On the other front, in my limited experience in the Kubernetes world, where we are deploying Manila API, scheduler, and multiple Manila shares, we learned that we basically can create multiple instances of Manila shares handling different protocols for the same Ceph cluster, or even the same protocol, like the same native CephFS with different file system. Using that option, that you mentioned at the beginning of this topic. So in theory, regardless of the deployer, that could be Kubernetes oriented or bare metal or whatever, I think that as long as we're able to deploy multiple Manila shares, we can handle actually multiple Ceph file systems, and we can bring this kind of support. I'm not sure if you have specific thoughts about it, or if a crazy solution. Think about deploying multiple Manila shares even in the bare metal world, but that could be easy to basically reuse the same code that today handles a single Ceph file system and expand this solution to have more on the Ceph side, especially if you have a single Ceph cluster, but it can be even a different Ceph cluster. So you can basically have support for multiple Ceph clusters in case your workload is deployed in a specific way. For instance, you can think about a Manila share as an instance that can manage specific workloads that can be geographically distributed or logically distributed in a way. But this is like something that can extend the usage of a Manila share in a way that you have different backends that are located elsewhere, and you can basically tie your Manila share to a specific backend with a specific protocol, or even the same Ceph cluster with multiple protocols or same protocols, because behind the scene there are pools, Ceph pools basically, that are tied to a specific file system. So in theory, this is a use case that we can already handle, which is different from how we started this topic, but this could be of interest for the broader group.
Yeah, actually, you said multiple things there. So I think one thing I can break down, I guess, is what exists currently is what you mentioned as well, which is if you were to try everything down to a single file system, you can have multiple Manila share services that are talking to the same Ceph cluster, but to different file systems. And that's, I think, the use case that I mean, the poster on the mailing list, as well as Elias, can live with, in the sense that they do have a single large Ceph file system that they are trying to carve out into multiple file systems and isolate different tenants that way. And the solution for them is to end up using multiple Manila share backends. Whether they're tying it out to multiple Manila share services or multi-backend within the share service, I think that's up to their architecture. But for something like the Manila operator that you've done a ton of work on, I mean, we've evolved a pattern there that it should be one Manila share process per backend for lots of other reasons and maintainability and other things. But it builds on top of this concept that your each driver instance is only operating with one file system on the Ceph side. And I guess the question when we started was, since Ceph supports multiple file systems, is it our next logical thing to work on to introduce multiple file systems within a single driver? And so that, I guess, has different issues, and you touched upon some of those, which is, I mean, for me, I think it's the complexity issue, in the sense that probably in one way you can think of it as, okay, you just need to worry about one driver operating with multiple file systems on the same cluster, and if you want to talk to a different Ceph cluster, you would create a different Manila share backend. That in some level might be simple, because you would not have way too many Manila share backends or way too many Manila share services, however you want to think about it and piece it. But you would have every backend capable of talking to multiple file systems. That way you can have multiple tenants associated with the same thing without having to configure multiple backends and so on. But it I don't know whether it is all that um, you know easy now if we made that possible. Like I mean, I don't know how much amount of ease we are creating just by supporting multiple file systems. And I was thinking more about it after brainstorming with you that I mean, in a deployment perspective, it does not sound too hard. In the maintenance perspective, it does not sound too hard because you're not going to have a whole lot of these file systems too. Because as I don't know what the Ceph statistics are, but in the wild, we have not seen folks create, one file system per tenant or something like that, right? You could have hundreds of OpenStack tenants. You don't end up with hundreds of Cephfs file systems. Typically, it doesn't usually scale that way. Because what happens there is for each Cephfs file system, you will need to end up carving out both your storage and memory and CPU because each FFS file system would be associated with MDS daemons with its own pool, which possibly is either having its data isolated to separate OSDs or or a pool of OSDs and so on. But you see that there's actually a different kind of a scaling problem when it comes to Ceph clusters. That you can't really have that kind of logical separation at a massive scale within a single cluster. So we can rewrite this problem into thinking that it's not, it's not a massive scale. So what we currently have will continue to work. And so should we even worry about, the same driver representing multiple file systems? Does that make sense, or did I entirely contradict you?
No, I think that makes sense. And that's the reason why, at the beginning, I wanted to split the problem into two different things, starting from the mailing list problem, which is different from having multiple Manila shares handling different native CFFS or any other protocol. So I think it totally makes sense from Manila perspective. It's a capability that we may want to have. We may want to extend in that direction. And we are aware that for that kind of scaling, we still have other options that we can achieve from a deployer point of view.
Right.
But I like the idea of the metadata because also we have the CSI and we can rely on this kind of thing to improve the capabilities on that front.
Okay, makes sense. So I guess would it help then? I guess whatever we provided to the mailing list and to Elias in like the IRC seem to be off our documentation, right? Like we've not really documented how this stuff works. So maybe that's one of the reasons for confusion. So we can actually start with our thought process on how this works, and what works currently, and how you can create multiple CFFS file systems on the Ceph cluster, and how you can represent them with Manila, as Manila backends and so on, because that part is not clear. It's not there in our doc so far. And then yes, if somebody comes along and says, "Oh, this is terrible. You're making this a configuration problem," then I guess we can think of the other extension to this problem because we're not seeing that use case right now, right? Does that make sense?
Yeah, agree.
Okay. Thank you.
Great. I think that covers the multi-FS support topic. So I guess let's move on to last but not least, is implementing ensure shares on an API level. So currently the only way to ensure shares is by restarting the service. And it seems, now that we have a good use case for, API level implementation in regards to the revalidation of Ceph addresses. So do we have any thoughts on maybe targeting this for this cycle?
Yeah, I think that is something that I would like to work on for this cycle. And again, thanks, Luis, for joining us today. So this bug was reported by the folks at CERN, and they also mentioned a couple of ways that we would be able to, or a couple of ways that we could fix this issue. And after we spoke about this issue, then we realized likely the best way to address this would be to kind of reuse one thing that we already have. So ensure shares is already done. It's already something that we have implemented in Manila, but that is only called when we restart the driver. And that is something that can be a bit annoying sometimes. So the idea that they were suggesting us was there are some times that they will need to change or the Ceph, the export locations or the IP addresses of the Ceph monitors have changed, and we would need to represent that in the export locations. So one way of doing that would be using ensure shares, because we kind of already have that, but we would need a way to get to it. So the idea would be to create a new API so that we can trigger it, and when we trigger it, then it would be able to reapply apply the changes to the access rules that we need. So it's pretty much like making it easier and not like making something like necessary to restart the driver to do so, because it can be quite annoying. So one of the things with this, and that came out while we talked about this as well, was like re-exporting all of the shares can take some time. So that's one of the concerns we have, like going through every single share and doing the exports again. It could take some time. So if we are doing that, one of the things we could do is try to have like, we have the API, yes, you can trigger ensure shares, but also have some sort of like a state or microstate that you can see if someone is already trying to reapply the access rules or get where we are with that process. Because otherwise, then it would be just like an eternal thing, like, I'm reapplying, and then I trigger the API, it starts, but it doesn't end. And then if someone lists, it's not updated yet, so go ahead and try to go ahead and do that again. So the idea is that at least one of the things that I was thinking about this was trying to add some sort of a state. So in case you are triggering it with the API and there is an operation already started for reapplying the access rules, then we wait. So that the operation will be blocked in case the export locations are being re-exported. And then in case every export location or every export path is already updated, we would allow the API to be called. For like the process of ensure shares, when you restart a driver, nothing will change, because you did a driver restart, so let's do that all times. But the API, I was thinking on the lines of blocking the triggering that API to only when you have only when you don't have one operation going on already and the previous ones finished. So that's the idea. One issue I can think of with this would be if somehow an export location is like stuck in a state, then yeah, it would be a bit tricky. But I'm not sure we can think about ways to work around that. You know, like we could try to have some sort of a reset status. I wouldn't like it a lot, but I mean, there are some times that shares also get stuck into a state, and we need to go there, and we need some sort of intervention to go there and get it back to a healthy state again. So yeah, that's basically one of the things that, or the way we are thinking about solving this issue. And there's something that I would like to work on for this cycle.
That makes something. I think the approach looks pretty neat, and it will cover perfectly what we were reporting in that bug. It would be handy maybe if it's possible for this API to somehow select the backends you want to, let's say, refresh run the ensure service, because maybe many backends are there behind, and maybe you don't want to refresh all of them. So if you can somehow target a particular one. And also is a good point what you mentioned, Carlos, about not run this thing many times. So either block or fail if there's already an ongoing run. So thank you.
Yeah, thanks. And yes, we can try to do something as we do, for example, with migration, where we can target a share service, or we can already like send a request to a specific backend. But yes, that would be nice. Otherwise, it's replaying it for all of the backends. It's not a good thing, I think. So yeah, thanks. Yeah, that's a nice thing to implement. Any other thoughts on this?
No, I agree with the backend stuff. You could, I mean, potentially allow shares to match filters. And so if you were to try to say, you know, I want all the shares that are owned by this project, and so on, should also be possible to implement pretty much the same way. And you then allow folks a way to break down the ensuring directly from the API, or just, you know, ensure a single share and stuff like that as well. So if you allow a backend specific port, maybe it you know, solves one use case, but other filters would also solve that same thing of breaking the thing down.
Yep.
And I agree with not using a microstate over here. That is a hidden state, because I mean, unless the end user needs, I mean, has that information, that there is something going on with the share, they might attempt to do something that and not know how to react to a failure there. Whereas if you set the state to say ensuring or something like that, it prevents stuff automatically, and it also gives that visibility saying shares not available, so cannot be snapshotted, or anything else cannot be done, for instance.
Yeah, I agree.
I'm wondering if there is a need to also erase the driver's backend info state as we do this, like, you know, override it, because that's one thing that the ensure shares mechanism has with respect to configuration. So you can configure something, and the ensure shares mechanism picks that up and then asks whether the configuration has changed the next time the ensure shares mechanism runs, right? So if there is no change, there's nothing to ensure, so we don't do anything. So if this API is supposed to work like that, you're probably expecting for us to bypass that that thing, or to update that and trigger it anyway. You know what I mean? Like the backend secret that we do evaluate.
Yeah, so I thought initially about updating it anyway.
Okay, so basically bypassing it or setting that secret also into the database so that the difference here is if we don't set it in the database, actually, if we don't set it in the database, the next time the share service restarts, nothing will happen. Which is correct, which is the behavior you want, right? Because the administrator has done this, but they have not gone ahead and changed any configuration, so don't run anything.
Yeah.
Yeah, that makes sense. Sorry. So yes, we should bypass the whole backend info thing in case we're doing this, triggering this from the API.
Yep.
All right, that's all the concerns I had. We should probably, were you planning to write a spec for this?
Yes, I am. So I'm planning to work on a spec, and then I can share it as early as possible, and then we can review the details. I can also I can make that available like we can also discuss that in our upstream meetings, or I can email that directly to gather some feedback, so I can send that to you, Luis and Enrico, when I have that. And you can, if you could please provide the feedback as well, that would be nice.
Yeah, that would be fantastic. Thanks, Carlos.
Thanks.
I have some feedback on what we did in our fork. We also had the need to run ensure shares a bit more often, and we did it not on demand, but we do it periodically. So we have kind of we run a separate service. We start Manila Share with a flag that we implemented to run ensure only if we provide that flag, and that runs ensure periodically, like every 4 hours or so. So that's just another option. So not just run it on demand, but always.
And so the share service is running in that case, and it's got some I mean there is a different service that is running just the share service, but with just the ensure shares bit.
Yes, so it's not the share service. It's so it is not listening to RPC. So it is just doing the ensure shares part.
Okay.
But it's a separate process, so to say. We're running it as a separate container in Kubernetes.
Yeah.
Hey, sorry, quick question here. Is this being able to be run as from a CLI? Like we have in the other project, like Glance, we have the ability to run a piece of code from a CLI in a separated process, which is something that we were discussing, I guess. So, and we do that using cron jobs, so we can have control about the timing according to the deployment, and it would be a nice solution probably to trigger this kind of ensure share from a different perspective that is not like the main process re-executing this code with a specific strategy, or giving so the idea could be just giving the operator, the human operator, the ability to specify this timing via classic cron job or things like that. So I was wondering if this is going to be triggered by a CLI, integrated with a CLI that we can just run.
Yeah, specifically with like we can provide that for the API, of course, but also with the OpenStack client, and then we can issue that. Also OpenStack SDK, but yeah, that would be the case. Like we would be able to trigger it all using these 3 ways.
Yeah, it would not be like the db purge command, right? Like it wouldn't be a thing that doesn't go through the API layer.
Yeah,
This would
right.
still go through the whole thing.
Yeah, that's a bit different. In Glance, for instance, when image cache is enabled, we have specific command that can be used to not purge the DB, but act on the image cache directory or the target directory that is used for image cache, and make sure, for instance, that you are not growing your file system on a specific on a specific sites, right? So the idea, and that's a
Keep
separated
pruning the
command.
directory. As
Yeah,
it's going.
exactly. It's
Okay.
kind of that. And I was wondering if we are trying to find a similar approach, or it's basically different. And those tools in Glance, for instance, are built on top of the API, of course, which is basically the common part here. We're providing the same config files. So that can be, instead of being a Glance API command, Glance API process, it's a different process. They use the same configuration, same environments, but it just acts on a specific piece. It just execute a specific piece of the Glance project. And I was trying to identify a pattern here from the API perspective that can be reflected or not, maybe in the future, in a CLI thing that can use the same Manila conf and then run just that piece of code, because the human operator just decided that want to run it periodically with those specific filters on that specific backend.
Yeah,
So
and that sounds exactly like what Maurice is doing
Yeah.
today, right?
Yeah.
In their cloud, except he's actually implemented this in a different way, but very similar perspective. I don't though see a downside of implementing this as an API that's accessible to users and administrators.
Tool. Yeah.
I agree. Yeah, I also don't see a downside. And the quant part can then be handled as well from the outside. Doesn't have to be.
Sorry, I didn't catch that. The what part?
The cron part, the periodic part.
Oh, the cron part. Yeah, exactly.
Want to run it periodically, you could still do this.
Yeah, and that makes sense to me. To automate something like this if things are changing in your environment, kind of thing, and put it in a cron job. Yeah, I think the Glance example makes me think of a similar Cinder thing with respect to clustered backends. But I don't know what the cleanup stage is. But there is a cleanup that you can automate and run with a cron job like this. But that also goes through the API. I can find that example, but it would fall in the same category of things that you would expect somebody, if things are in your environment in this particular way changing quite a bit externally, you would follow this approach. All right, Carlos, I think we have our next step, right?
Yep. Awesome. Thanks, guys.
Perfect. Yes. I think Ashley, was that it?
Sorry, I was muted. I think this wraps up everything for Cephfs, and we are a little bit over time and going into the operator now. So I don't know, Carlos, do you want to take a break now or later?
Yeah, it's gonna be like a kind of a 1 hour operator hour that we have scheduled. So do you guys mind taking a 4 or 5 minute break? And then we can get back and discuss continue for the hour.
Yeah, I'm okay with that.
Okay, yeah. So 5 minute break it is. I will stop the recording and see you in 5 minutes.
Great, thanks.
All right, we are back. First things first, thank Gotham, Ashley, Francesco for participating on the previous topic. It was a great discussion. Thank you all for the feedback and sharing the updates on those things. I will hand it to Gotham that he has an announcement, big announcement to do.
No, not a big one, but just wanted to say hi to the outreachy prospect that's joined us, Dorothy. Thank you for joining us, and I hope you got a flavor of how things are planned in the community and stuff. For the others, just wanted to give you an opportunity to say hi and welcome her.
Yeah, hi everybody. I see I have a lot to learn from. I'm Dorothy from Uganda, and I'm now Tishi intern, and I'd really love to contribute to the Manila project. I've just joined, but I see there's a lot to learn at my end, and thank you for the presentation. I'll just hop off from here to get familiar with the docs. Thanks.
Thanks for joining
feel free
us.
to bring anytime, and thank you so much.
Yeah.
Sure, thank you.
Thank you for joining us. Great to see you here, and yeah, looking forward to all working together.
Great, Sam. Have a lovely evening. Evening. Yeah.
Sure, thanks. All right. Okay, so operator hour. Yes, I should stop recording and get back to the, get to the new one. I thought I'll do that. So 1 minute.